Today, we will be talking about civil and military rule in Nigeria. Please quickly get your book and your pen as our class begins. You're all welcome back. Today, we'll be looking at various subtopics under the topic being mentioned. We'll be looking at the meaning of civil rule. Also, we'll be looking at the periods of civil rule in Nigeria, civilian leaders since independence. We'll be looking at the meaning of military rule, the periods of military rule in Nigeria, and the military leaders we have had since independence. Firstly, let me tell you what a civil rule is. A civil rule or a civilian rule is a rule by a non-military government, usually guided by a constitution. Note, by a constitution. But what exactly is a constitution? When we talk about constitution, what is a constitution? A constitution is a set of rules that guides how a country, state, or other political organization works. That is a constitution. It's a set of rules that guides how a country, a state, or other political organization works. Now, in Nigeria, we have had several periods of civil rule, and the first one was actually between 1963 and 1966, and that's referred to as our first republic. Remember, Nigeria got our independence in 1960 and became a republic in 1963. So between 1963 and 1966, we had our first period of civil rule in Nigeria. So the next one was between 1979 and 1983, which was our second republic. And the third one was in 1993, which is our third republic. And the last one, or the one we are still having till date, is between 1999 and now. And we are in our fourth republic. But let's see what a republic actually is. A republic is a state in which supreme power rests in the body of citizens entitled to vote and is exercised by representatives chosen directly or indirectly by them. This is what a republic is. So when you say a country is a republic, you simply know it's a state in which the supreme power rests in the body of citizens entitled to vote and exercised by representatives chosen directly or indirectly by them. Now let's see the various civilian leaders we have had since independence. The first civilian president or the first civilian leader we had in Nigeria was President Nnamdi Azikiwe, and this was between 1963 and 1966. Nnamdi Azikiwe, usually referred to as Zik, was actually a Nigerian statesman and political leader who served as the first president of Nigeria. Is always referred to as the first ceremonial president of Nigeria. He was just a ceremonial president because he was not democratically elected, and is referred to as the father of Nigerian nationalism. Now next, we're going to look at President Shehu Shagari, who was the second civilian leader we had. And this was between 1979 and 1983. Shehu Shagari was the first elected president, the first democratically elected president Nigeria had? Take note. So when a question like this is asked, who was the first executive president of Nigeria? You say Shehu Shagari. But when someone just asks you who was the first president or ceremonial president of Nigeria, you say Nnamdi Azikiwe. So next we had President Ernest Shonekan, who only stayed for 1 year, and that was in 1993. And after that we had, after a period of military rule, we now had President Olusegun Obasanjo, who took over power in 1999 and stayed till 2007. After Obasanjo, we had President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua, and that was between 2007 and 2010. Actually, Umaru Musa Yar'Adua died while he was still in office, while he was still serving as the president of Nigeria. But then he had a deputy, the person of President Goodluck Jonathan, who now took over power in 2010. So between 2010 and 2015, we had a civilian leader, which was President Goodluck Jonathan. And of course, you know who our president is now. President Muhammadu Buhari, who took over in 2015 until date, is still our president. Next, we are going to look at the meaning of military rule. Now, we have looked at what civil rule is, so we're going to look at what military rule is about. A military government is generally any government that is administered by military forces. It is usually carried out by military workers. So we have had several periods of military rule in Nigeria. So I'll just mention them to you quickly. The first one was in 1966. Next we had a military leader between 1966 and 1975. Also 1975 to 1976. 1976 to 1979, 1983 to 1985, 1985 to 1993, 1993 to 1998, and 1998 to 1999. All these periods, we had military leaders. So we're going to look at the various military leaders we had throughout these periods. The first one we had was Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi. Major General Johnson Aguiyi Ironsi, who was the head of state in 1966. 1966, Aguiyi Ironsi was the head of state in Nigeria. Between 1966 and 1975, we had General Yakubu Gowon as our second military leader. So after then, we had General Murtala Mohammed, and that was between 1975 and 1976. You all know Murtala Mohammed's portrait is on the 20 Naira note, and it's actually the only military leader that has his portrait on a Nigerian currency. So between 1976 and 1979, we had Major General Olusegun Obasanjo. Now, if you have heard of the OFN, which is the Operation Feed the Nation, this program was actually introduced in Nigeria by General Olusegun Obasanjo when he was leading as a military head of state. Now, next we had Major General Muhammadu Buhari, who was the head of state between 1983 and 1985. The War Against Indiscipline, that is WAI, was actually introduced in Nigeria on May 4th, 1984 by the head of state, Muhammadu Buhari. So next we had General Ibrahim Babangida, who stayed from 1985 to 1993. And Nigeria was divided into 30 states by Ibrahim Babangida. Next we had General Sani Abacha, who stayed between 1993 and 1998. Abacha was actually a dictator. So next we had General Abdulsalami Abubakar. So he was the last military head of state we had in Nigeria before a civilian president took over again in 1999. I'd love to give you or tell you some facts quickly. Remember we talked about Goodluck Jonathan. Goodluck Jonathan was the one who privatized the power sector in Nigeria in 2013. And the first military head of state to hand over to an elected civilian government was Olusegun Obasanjo. And please take note, Nigeria was divided into 19 states in 1976. I hope you have learned a lot today. Please do not fail to ask questions. See you in our next class.